Today's gospel reading is from Paul's first letter to Timothy on the subject of the lust for money. These are the things I want you to teach and preach. If you have leaders there who teach otherwise, who refuse the solid words of our Master Jesus and this godly instruction, tag them for what they are: ignorant windbags who infect the air with germs of envy, controversy, bad-mouthing, suspicious rumors. Eventually, there's an epidemic of backstabbing, and truth is but a distant memory. They think religion is a way to make a fast buck. A devout life does bring wealth, but it's the rich simplicity of being yourself before God. Since we entered the world penniless and will leave it penniless, if we have bread on the table and shoes on our feet, that's enough. But if it's only money these leaders are after, they'll self-destruct in no time. Lust for money brings trouble and nothing but trouble. Going down that path, some lose their footing in the faith completely and live to regret it bitterly ever after. But you, Timothy, man of God, run for your life from all this. Pursue a righteous life, a life of wonder, faith, steadiness, courtesy. Run hard and fast in the faith. Seize the eternal life, the life you were called to, the life you so fervently embraced in the presence of so many witnesses. I'm charging you before the life-giving God and before Christ, who took a stand before Pontius Pilate and didn't give an inch. Keep this command to the letter and don't slack off. Our Master, Jesus Christ, is on his way. He'll show up right on time, his arrival guaranteed by the blessed and undisputed ruler, High King, High God. He's the only one death can't touch. His light so bright, no one can get close. He's never been seen by human eyes. Human eyes can't take him in. Honor to him and eternal rule, oh yes. Tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous. If they do that, they'll build a treasury that will last, gaining life that is truly life. Let's end at the word.
Thank you, Frank. This passage in Timothy is best read in the version that Frank just read for us out of Eugene Peterson's The Message. When I first read it a couple months ago, I read it in the NRSV and still picked it for this particular Sunday. You was smart. But then when I read it on Monday in The Message, I emailed Frank and said, use the message when you read it. Because these instructions are very simply put in the Message. And honestly, beautiful instruction. You could even use most of these if you were at a religious school and for a commencement address. I love this one the most, I think. A devout life does bring wealth, but it's the rich simplicity of being yourself before God. Isn't that beautiful? Just be who you are before God, and you are defining devoutness. Since we entered the world penniless and will leave it penniless, as long as we have bread on the table and shoes on our feet, that's enough. It's a great instruction too, right? Pursue a righteous life, a life of wonder, faith, love, steadiness, courtesy. Tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on riches, all the riches we could ever imagine. Right? It says ever manage. To do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous, similar to the list the kids made out, right? You could print out any or all of these and place them around your home or office for daily inspiration. I like every single one of these. They give us clear instructions on how to seek God best by just being kind and by being ourselves. You is kind, you is smart, you is important. God says so. How does society, the world at large, best offer instruction? to the next generation? How do we teach others in society about how they should live, the ones that are coming up behind us? In schools, they tell students to take a bunch of advanced placement tests so they can hopefully earn academic scholarships and get into a good school. The world at large encourages students to study some sort of field where they can make a lot of money to be successful. How do we offer instruction to the next generation here in our church? That's one reason I was asking them that question, to see what they might say. Is it by telling them to read their Bibles for an hour every day? They didn't say that. Is it by teaching them to give to their neighbor in need? They kind of didn't say that. Is it by encouraging them to be a part of our faith community by acolyting and ushering and serving as liturgists and running the projector and decorating for graduation Sunday? Or maybe could we be teaching the generation following to be who they are, live the life you want to live by the fact that they're watching us do that? Could the instruction be by living the life we want them to see us living? The instruction offered in 1 Timothy suggests that money is not the way to get rich in the eyes of God, but living a devout life is. And remember, devout being defined as being yourself. And notice in this version that devoutness is never in any sort of thread of these instructions talking about being holy or perfect or any sort of thing that you might consider religious in nature, but just being you. Being who God made you to be. And that's an amazing instruction that comes out of this passage of 1 Timothy. And that might be the best possible instruction that we could offer the next generation. In The Help by Catherine Stockett, the college-educated white girl who comes to the black maids to get them to tell her their stories. When she decides to write this book about their stories, she tackles this project perhaps a little naively at first, but she understands pretty quickly the danger in crossing those racial lines in Jackson, Mississippi in the 60s. These women who gathered together to tell her the stories of their lives serving as maids in the white households give her a pretty quick education in what real life is like for them, rather than this sort of secluded bubble of life that she grew up with, Skeeter grew up with in her white world. She sees firsthand what discrimination is, and though she can't ever know exactly how they feel, she gets a sense of the ways that their reality has definite limitations in ways that hers doesn't, not even in the very gender-biased 60s. This letter attributed to Paul in 1 Timothy, it's probably not written by Paul, but by someone using his name as a pseudonym. But it's written to this church that's still kind of forming and offering instruction for that church and then the faith communities that will follow in the generations to come. It's written to give them instruction on how to avoid false teaching. Setting down some kind of, game rules or guidelines to keep the next generations of Christians on the right path. I think an important piece of studying the letters of Timothy, though, is understanding the very complicated concept of false teaching. Is what is a false teaching to one person automatically a false teaching to another? And how do we decide what instruction is best to offer a particular people? Schools have worked hard over the last few years to begin differentiating instruction for students. What ways, if any, do churches vary their instructions to meet the needs of the people where they are? How can we see the differences we have and work to create a church that builds up differences rather than dismissing them as liabilities? In this upper crust world that Skeeter was raised in, she was taught to see black people as persons to be pitied, persons who were destined to live a life of servitude. That was the teaching she was subject to. Now, that's easy for us to look at that today as a false teaching. But we wouldn't have felt that way in Jackson, Mississippi, or many places in the early 1960s. Times change, teachings change, concepts and contexts change. And all too often the church stays pretty rigid to the changing ways of time and life around us. We are only as knowledgeable as we allow ourselves to be in any given moment. These maids grew in knowledge of the white world through Skeeter. They learned, and maybe they didn't know this before, that not everybody white around them looked only at the color of their skin. They learned through Skeeter that some people don't look at the color of your skin first. And Skeeter learned that she could have a college degree and still know nothing about the world she was raised in without engaging and talking to people to get their own stories. In the end, the maids, of course, do stay in Jackson and are forced to continue to confront the racial bias, the discrimination. Their stories now made public, though supposedly anonymous, in the publishing of the book. And Skeeter, because of the book, is offered a job in New York and moves away. And this, understandably, makes her feel somewhat guilty. There's a lot of chaos swirling around after this book is published. And she feels guilty leaving the maids there in the midst of all this drama she helped to create. Her eyes have been open to the realities of life, but life is still carrying on just the same way it always did. And it worries her that she would actually think it's okay for her to go. She's encouraged, though, by Aibileen to go and set her wings to flight, to make this time her time. The quote for that is in the bulletin. Tell those rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous. If they do that, they'll build a treasury that will last, giving life that is truly life. Aibileen had that 3-part mantra for little May Mobley about being kind, smart, and important. And we discussed last week that being kind is probably the one that does indeed trump them all. But being smart is probably the most subtle and profound. Because Aibileen didn't necessarily mean being smart in the sense of obtaining a bunch of college degrees or studying high-level subjects. She meant a different kind of smart that makes a difference in how we move and interact in the world. What makes us smart, then, as we journey to whatever tomorrow brings? Being kind, helpful, caring, respectful, treating everyone we meet as important, understanding that being who we really are, is all God ever wants us to be. Pursuing a life of wonder, faith, love, steadiness, courtesy. Following all those little great pieces of advice from 1 Timothy. I'm reading a book called The Happiness Project, and the author, Gretchen Rubin, lists as one of her mantras in that book, there is only love. Great words to try to live into, right? There is only love. So she says, anytime she gets frustrated, mad, or upset, she says, there is only love. Think about some days how many times you'd say that. If we look at the world, no matter how unknown or frazzled it might be ahead of us, and we can say to that world, there is only love, and act only with kindness, then we're doing possibly the smartest thing that we can ever do. And you don't have to have a college degree or a high school diploma or any kind of formal education at all to know that love and kindness will carry you farther at the end of the day than any amount of money. You is kind, you is smart, you is important. May we remember those words in all we do in the name of Christ. May we see our role as disciples as the most important thing we do. Most importantly, may we truly be exactly who we are before God and understand that is the most important task we have. Amen.